Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the High Impact Governance Series. My name is Tom Miller, and I will be your facilitator for this session on what great boards do differently. One in this aspect is creating the agenda and the purpose of your board retreat. So let's get started. So our focus as an organization is to be the difference maker in the leadership development of individuals and organizations. We as an organization focus on leadership, operations, governance, and academics for public charter schools. I want to first thank you. Being a charter school board member myself, I certainly know about the commitment to the organization's vision and community and the vitality to ensure a positive education experience for all students. Now it directly impacts each individual student. Okay, every charter school's success or lack of success comes from actions or non-actions of the board. So you have a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. So I congratulate you for putting yourself out there and volunteering your time and effort on such a worthwhile endeavor. So throughout this 11-part series, 10+1, we have focused our time on the roles and responsibilities of a charter school board member. Every month I go through these, so you know, I repeat what's most important. First role and responsibility is to establish and evaluate student outcomes. Secondly, establish and monitor management compliance with policies designed to maximize legal compliance and ethical behavior. 3, approving and terminating contracts, evaluating the executive. So you are the human resources department. 4, oversee and approve the use of operational finances. 5, establish and monitor the organizational goals. Yes, your organization should have goals. Okay. And lastly, develop the board's capacity to understand governance. It's your responsibility to get better as a board each meeting. That's why we put this 11-part series. It will be additional support for you and your board. Also, your role, a key role, is to be aware of destination disease. And what is that? That is the same thinking that gets the same results equals destination disease. Even if those results are the highest performing public charter school in your county, you should never be satisfied, right? Because we're talking about the lives and the livelihood of hundreds to thousands of children over time. Right? So don't just settle for the status quo. So our learning so far over our first 9 months now, this is month number 10, is about how boards communicate effectively, keep the main thing, how to lead purposeful meetings, have trust but verification process, how to ensure that there is strong oversight with your finances, creating a culture that you desire to see, recruit and orienting new board members, how you measure the organization's effectiveness, and how it's important for board members to always ask great questions. You can find all of those on our YouTube page and also off of our website as being part of our governance webinar series. So we started off all the way back in August of 2015 talking about the formula for greatness. And great boards establish a shared mission and vision. They develop relationships of mutual trust and respect, and they set clear performance expectations. No surprises. Okay, that is the formula for greatness for any organizational board. So this session is going to be focusing on planning your end-of-the-year retreat. Okay. So we're going to, our one goal is going to provide the basic tenets of an effective strategic retreat. So here's why we have a retreat, right? strategic retreats contribute to the overall school performance by, number one, growing the board's and the leadership's overall capacity. Right? That's one of the main roles and responsibilities. Spending a half a day or a whole day or sometimes multiple days at a retreat is definitely going to grow the organization's capacity. You're going to establish a better understanding of the big picture of the school's current state, which includes student achievement, school environment, teacher community, parent community, and administrative issues. You're going to reach a consensus across the school community on which needs represent the highest priorities. Right? This is where you establish your desired goals for the upcoming year, right? to get action based upon the potential and to improve overall student and school performance. And finally, identify goals and strategies, which include specific targets, indicators, and milestones aligned to address these school priorities. So basically, you're going to get better, you're going to grow your organization, make sure you're staying on the path to success, establishing what matters most right now, who is responsible for, and what will it look like. It's important that a board understand that maintaining a connection between the mission, vision, and the strategic plan halts the tendency of making radical changes based upon the current fads, but promotes continuity for the benefit of children and the families who selected a charter school, right? So ultimately, having this annual retreat keeps the organization aligned. It's like going to the chiropractor, right? You go to the chiropractor, you go for alignment. Having this retreat makes sure everybody comes all together at least one time a year to make sure we are staying on path. Depending upon the age of your organization, okay, this is critical times, your first 3 to 5 years. It's critical when you have a leadership change. The mission and the vision of your organization should never change. It certainly can be tweaked. We ultimately want to make sure that you are staying on path. And finally, strategic retreat planning. It's a valuable mechanism for creating collaboration within the school and developing a sense of shared purposes. It creates an opportunity for diverse ideas, perspective, and experiences to surface from certain team members, right? So moving from me to we, right? So me, if I'm the principal, you're the board, bringing us all together, right? No unity, right? No trust, no unity, no progress. Right? So moving from a me to we attitude. Okay, so let's look at, these are the 4 tenets that we're going to talk about during this session. One is going to be follow a clear process for retreat development, clarify a purpose for having the strategic retreat, identify the leadership for the creation and the leadership for the implementation, and also include fidelity measures when planning strategies to ensure measurement of the execution process. So let's start with step 1, following a clear process for retreat development. Here we go. Here's just the greatest answer. There is no perfect way to conduct a strategic retreat. Okay? Every board, every group of people have their own personality. Remember, boards should be a group of like-minded individuals who think differently. So there's no perfect way. It should be limited to the school's 3 to 5 top priorities. So there should be some work ahead of time to determine what those 3 to 5 priorities are. And it should have concise, easily accessible, and simple to update, okay, in that regards to the process. So every single year when you do your process, okay, it shouldn't be set in stone. You shouldn't have it set in policy. The policy should just be that you have a retreat every year. Okay, but whatever that retreat looks like should be simple to update. So let's think about our top priorities. When defining the top priorities, the school community and individuals tasked with developing the plan should always consider those defined qualities and skills and identify those that merit the most attention, obviously, right? Priorities. In a school, in an organization, what are your top priorities? Okay, we'll talk about those, but hey, You go to school to learn, right? So we would think that academics needs to be a priority. So this retreat gives the board an opportunity to talk about the initiatives that are going well and ones that deserve more attention and resources, right? Or some that are underperforming and need different strategies and different thoughts. Okay, so here's some examples. Academics, okay, your finances, maybe creating some long-term goals, taking a deeper dive into your budget, your budget processing. Development, this could be fundraising, this could be facilities development. Okay, there's so many things that could be here. Compliance, okay, organizational compliance, looking at making sure that your handbooks meet all the needs of your constituents, taking an annual look at your bylaws. Organizational health, looking at teachers' working condition surveys, internal surveys, external surveys, teacher turnover, student turnover, complaints, right? Just organizational health aspects. Looking at alignment. Why do we exist? Okay, make sure you're still mission and values aligned. Taking a look at your governance structure. Do we have enough board members to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish? Do we have our committee structures in place? What do our committees do? Maybe you're going to take a look at your long-term goals, right? Aligning your short-term goals to your long-term goals. Maybe you're in a process of complete school reform and turnaround. Maybe you're growing, so you need to expand, right? Maybe you're looking at replication or expansion of your current organization. So there's so many examples of what your priorities could be, right? Leadership changes. Okay. All right, so let's look at step 2. So clarify a purpose for having the retreat, okay? And I would say that a properly well-structured and educationally sound strategic retreat, that you have to have a reliable system and organizational buy-in. Okay, so what does buy-in look like? Buy-in does not look like scheduling a retreat and then trying to make sure everybody's going to be there. Buy-in to the retreat is something that everybody looks forward to on an annual basis, right? How do you make it special? How do you really establish the why? Most organizations try to have the retreat at the end of the year, and summertime gets really busy for people, right? There's so many schedules and so many things on place. I've seen some organizations do their retreat earlier in the spring, okay? Because if you've heard the lessons or read the book The Four Seasons by Jim Rohn, I talk about the seasons of a charter school. You've got to prepare your crops in the spring so you'll have a bountiful harvest in the fall. So maybe your retreat is more in the springtime, right? And that gives you a couple months to prepare for the end of the year. Having your retreat in June and July, you're kind of behind the ball sometimes. So know your purpose, act in your purpose, and grow your purpose, right? So always be thinking about that. So what does this look like at the retreat? Your retreat needs some reflection. Has to have some reflection. Identify the core outcomes of previous work. So you're looking at last year's goals. You're looking at the evidences to show what was accomplished based on those goals. Now, if the key leaders and stakeholders do not understand where they are going, it's time to pull the bus over, right? So visualization is so important. Can you visualize your vision? Are your leaders visual? Are you as a board? You are the visionaries. You are the ones taking the organization there. You're not physically doing it, but you're ensuring the alignment. But if nobody's really sure where you're trying to go, it might be time to pull the bus over. And communicate. Determine the crucial, meaty, consequential, and challenging tasks the team must interdependently tackle, and communicate and recruit key stakeholders to create and implement. All right, so your purpose has reflection, visualization, and communication. All right, let's take a look at what your agenda may include. Okay, your agenda might include team and trust building activities. Definitely should include data review of organizational goals. It may include some governance strengthening exercises, maybe some professional development. Okay, there could be some committee work and reporting and goal setting for the next year. These might be 5 aspects of your agenda. So let's just think a little bit deeper. Let's just talk a little bit deeper of what this may look like. Let's look first at your team trust building activities. An organizational retreat that we led recently, we started off because it was, after my observations, it was clear that the members of the board really didn't know each other. And we definitely had, there was definitely some trust issues. So we spent, the first 30 minutes just talking about our childhood, things we overcame as children, kind of the why that we're here, what we would ultimately like to see as a board. One thing you may do is you may do some personality profiles. You might be, do some team personality pieces so you can get a better understanding of how everybody works as a team. All right. Data review. So hopefully a lot of this was done ahead of time, but you may just have a short synopsis of looking at last year's goals, okay? I would have an annual as an organization. You should have a state of the charter. What did we accomplish last year? What did we set up to accomplish? What did we actually accomplish? This is a great document that you could provide your stakeholders, right? So maybe during the retreats, this is some time just either preparing for the creation of that document, or maybe you're going over the document, the last and final drafts. But data review, it's really important to celebrate the organizational wins. This is a great way to do it. Governance strengthening exercises, and you'll find these on our website. Reach out to us, and we'd be happy to share some of our strengthening exercises, especially the ones that come along with this high impact governance webinar series. But governance strengthening exercises could be review of the bylaws, okay, review as policies. When we facilitate retreat for organizations, we do a lot of case studies. Okay, we will share a true charter school story and talk about what practices that you as an organization have in place to ensure this doesn't occur at your school. Committee work, okay, this could maybe, after you've identified what your priorities are, or looking at the data, break off into your committees with a task. Give them 45 minutes to an hour to work together to maybe create their strategic calendar for the next year, right? Or to reflect upon what went well in their committees and what needs to get better. Maybe they're doing actual physical work, maybe some data analysis, maybe some information that EOGs came in and the academic committee's taking a deeper dive. And then finally, reporting and goal setting for the next upcoming year. So reporting upon, what did we just talk about for an hour? Here's our goal for next year. Here's some of the action plans that we as a board are going to take. So hearing this, sometimes your committee members are not all board members. So you may invite other people, other critical friends to your strategic retreat. They're perfectly fine. Bring them in there. Bring those committee members as part of the agenda. All right, let's keep moving on. Identifying the leadership. Peter Drucker, one of the greatest organizational leaders of our time, management leaders of our time, talks about effective leadership is not about making speeches or being liked. Leadership is defined by results, not attributes. Right? So identify the leadership for the creation and the leadership for the implementation of the overall retreat. So who's going to be leading this? Who's going to be carrying these pieces out? It certainly should be a shared responsibility. Okay, should the principal do it? The board chair? The governance committee? Combination of all three? The executive committee? Maybe you hire a third party in an organization like ours to come out and I could tell you that when we facilitate retreats, we spend probably 10 to 15 hours preparing because we'll do interviews with board members. We'll be going through a 360 data analysis of the school, pulling all pieces together. There's, creating the agenda, making sure that we make what's the best return on investment on everybody's time. So it's really important. So you're clear who's responsible for the development and the implementation of all aspects of the retreat, and also who's accountable for the follow-up. So what does this maybe look like? I've already talked a little bit about collecting and analyzing data. Okay, so this could be strategic stakeholder surveys and interviews, analyze any local data, and I would also not only take your data, but maybe the schools around you, the traditional public schools, charter schools, maybe there's some private schools opening up, because it'll be important. I would want to know that if I'm struggling with recruitment, I want to know that there's other schools opening up, right? Or if I'm struggling academically, I want to know what the schools who have a similar population of students around me are doing. Okay, the second phase could be establish your priorities and goals. So this is healthy discussions with diverse stakeholders to really dig down into the priorities. Right after you're looking at the data, really dive down into what is most important here. What is it that we're missing, that we really need to turn our attention to for this entire upcoming school year, and develop a SMART goal, one for each priority. And again, communicate to all stakeholders, be transparent, coherent, and inspiring. And after the retreat, you can get this out in town hall meetings and forums or your newsletter. Just follow-up correspondence to your stakeholders is critical. So, ultimately during this retreat, I mean, you're ultimately building the outside framework of your school improvement plan. Right? It's interesting when I work with a lot of organizations, some will have a strategic plan, and then they also have a school improvement plan. And then like the board will have one and the school has one. It's like, so ultimately you need an organizational improvement plan, okay, school improvement plan. But I want you to just remember this. Plans are great. Plans are fantastic. Right? A goal without a plan is a wish. So you have to have something in place. But most importantly, no matter how well developed and built on relevant data and loaded with research-based strategies to improve the learning and focus on the school's critical needs, it's only as good as its execution. Okay? So you could spend hours and hours and hours and hours planning, but not a lot of time executing. And worst of all, you spend all this time, hours and hours developing, and then you just never take the plan out to take a look at it. Right? So part of your strategy needs to be once a week, at least once a month at the board meeting. Once a week the school year, but once a month the board should be taking a look at progress towards the execution of these goals. Okay, so let's take a look at the implementation part, right? So we've talked about the creation, now let's talk about the implementation. So what does this look like? When you're looking at the individual priorities, you need to recruit and appoint committees to plan the training, tasks, and the deliverables. Okay, so I believe that your committees on your board should align to the ultimate goals based upon your priority list. Okay, and if you have an academic and a governance and a legal compliance and a financial committee, actually just three, academics, governance, and finances, and maybe you have a development, there's four right there. You could certainly take these priorities of your organization and stick them under those committees. But somebody's got to be in charge on a monthly basis of a deep dive into our analyzation. There's got to be trainings as well, right? So if your organization is lacking in certain areas, it's lacking probably because it doesn't necessarily have the overall education nor the training. So it's really important to make sure that all members of the staff and the committees have a clear understanding of where we're going, what's our current reality, and what are our current needs, and how are we getting there, right? And part of that needs probably training. And again, communicate to all levels of stakeholders, be transparent and inspiring. Remember, you want to get this flywheel moving. If you read Jim Collins' Good to Great, he talked about getting that flywheel that fly will turn and just slower. And the more you gain momentum, the faster it's going to turn, right? Everybody wants to be part of a winner. And again, you can do this through your town meetings, forums, and follow-up correspondence. And here we go. Jim Collins' best-selling book, Good to Great. He shared how people desire to be part of a winning team and contribute to produce results. And from page 14 of his book, when people begin to see tangible results and can feel the flywheel start to build speed, that's when they line up, throw their shoulders to the wheel, and really, really push. And it's easier to get pushing through a small, focused committee than it is from a larger board. All right, you want your committees to be your roll your sleeves up and get it done people, right? So parents, critical friends, teachers, maybe students, depending on the age of your school, could be any, you got to get that flywheel effect moving. Get it moving. So if you have any questions about those four, please, please, please email me at tom@leadersbuildingleaders.com. Okay, tom@leaders-building-leaders.com. So let's talk about step number 4. Okay, let's talk about step 4 here. So to close the retreat, you need to include fidelity measures to ensure measurement of the execution process. Maybe this is not the voted measures, but it's at least a draft of the measures. Okay. You may not have enough time to go through. You may need some, folks need time to process, but you should at least be leaving the retreat with a draft of these measures. And these measures should include specific targets, planned checkpoints, and concrete data indicators and milestones to ensure board members, principals, and teachers and the school improvement teams receive the feedback needed to determine how well the improvement strategies are working. Remember, because it's the board's responsibility is how well. Not how will, how well. Okay, and the feedback's got to be utilized to make decisions about changing effective strategies and continuing those that work. Remember when we talked about leading purposeful meetings and creating your strategic calendar, these aspects should be right in there every month or whatever your reporting is. Maybe it's quarterly, maybe it's monthly, that they're tied right into your strategic calendar. Because this is what effective oversight looks like. Your outcomes-based calendar, so I just talked about your strategic calendar, outcomes-based calendar. Okay, you start there, which every time you look at the calendar, you say, oh, what is going to be on the agenda for next month? Oh, I see we have an academic committee report. We have our first deep dive into the finances, and we're also going to get a report from our development committee regarding fundraising. Your calendar drives your agenda. Okay, you need a responsive agenda, not a reactive agenda, so that your meetings are focused on strategic questions and discussion, which lead to verification of the results. Okay, go back into that leading purposeful meetings session for more details on that works. But here's an example. So let's say we are a governance committee and we're reporting on our strategic goals. And this is a balanced scorecard example. And you've got three columns. You got your green, yellow, and red. Your green meaning that you've achieved the goal. Your yellow meaning that you are, maybe within 20% of achieving or 25% of achieving, and red would be anything below. So maybe the overall goal was to expand the board by 4 members with identified skill sets, and we're yellow because maybe we've only got 2. Right? Or maybe our fundraising development was to raise $200,000 by the end of the year, and we only raised $150,000, so we're not there yet. New initiatives, we got our staff development in green, and we've got our finances, the budget improved, and it demonstrated a 10% fund balance. So those were green. So those are just overall goals that you may have, and this is just a great, easy, clean way of showing your progress. Okay, boards don't need all this deep, raw data, because most importantly, I want to look at this and I want to be able to ask questions, which we're going to talk about in a second. Maybe here's a lead administrator report. The goal was to have student enrollment of still 400 by month 9. You see that's green. Also a wait list of 400. We're not quite there yet. And maybe we're only at 300. There's a lot of important questions that can come out of there. So we're yellow. Personnel retention, 95% of the teachers invited to return signed contracts for a renewal. Maybe only 80% did. That's a red. Right? That's a huge problem. And the financial vitality of the year, a fund balance of $100,000 or more to close the year. You made that happen. Remember, the boards have the full reports already. You've already sent them that. So the board meeting could just be this nice, easy overview of the goals. Okay, a little dashboard. So based upon that, here's some strategic questions that the board may ask. And again, we've already done a session on this about great boards ask, or good boards ask great questions. You can find that and take a listen to it. But so as a board member, I may want to know, what do these standardized test results tell us about the effectiveness of our overall education program in terms of our curriculum? If we're not performing well on tests, is it a curriculum problem? Is it a teacher problem? What is it? As a board, I need to know. As a board member, I need to know. Looking at this performance report, where are we in reaching our academic goals? What programs are working for us? Which need further evaluation? I remember as a principal having all of these supplementary programs, and I really never had evidences on which ones worked. And each one costs money, so there should be an annual program evaluation. What trainings are we providing our teachers to ensure that instructional methods are meeting the needs of all of our kids, right? If I'm looking at subgroup data and I'm noticing that some of my subgroups are not performing very well, what types of trainings do I need to know? Do we need to implement? Do we need to reach out and find? This is important with our students with disabilities, population increasing. What adjustments do you recommend we as a board discuss in terms of our education plan, our staffing, and our budgeting for the future? Every single year when I'm at board meetings in early of the year, I always see that, well, we have 10 more students with disabilities than we thought. We had a student enroll and we weren't prepared. Blah, blah, you got to be you got to be responsive and not reactionary. Okay, and what does the research say in regards to our curriculum? Does it align with our current population of students? As a charter school, especially a school in your first 1 to 4 years, you're still in that state of a scarcity and survival. Right? You wrote this incredible plan, but those maybe aren't the kids that showed up. So what does it say in terms of your curriculum? Does our curriculum match our kids' need? Does our training match what our kids' needs are? Here's some other mission-based strategic questions. What percentage of our students meet our targeted student population criteria laid out by the charter? So this is exactly what I was just talking about. Maybe you have a college prep charter, but you are opening a school in an underserved area. I got a feeling that your kids are not going to be ready for a high-level college prep curriculum right away. So you don't adjust your goal, you adjust your actions to get to your goal. Maybe you are a arts-based school focusing on music, and there is no EOG for music, so I would want to know, do we have, what is our students' proficiency on the musical instruments? Do we have a rubric? Do we have a way to determine kids are growing? What percentage of our families choose our school based upon a marine science partnership program? Right? You as an organization might be bragging upon your specific partnerships you have, but none of your parents may even have an understanding that it's there, because that's not why they chose you. Have we surveyed local businesses to see how we are preparing students for the immediate workforce? I would love to know that. If I'm a high school, if I'm a secondary school, especially if I'm preparing kids for college or some form of professional job right away, how are our kids doing? What do we need to get better at? I remember when I was a middle school principal, I used to continually contact the high schools that our kids went to find out, what are our kids struggling at there? What did we have to do at a middle school to better prepare our kids for when they got to high school? We were a tiny middle school. and our kids were going into these big high schools. I wanted to make sure that we were preparing them. How about finances? What is our breakdown of students per LEA, and what is the revenue schedule for each LEA? This is a great retreat conversation, a great educational moment, so boards have an understanding of how do we actually get money? Where does our money actually come from? How are we ensuring that the school system is giving us every dollar for our kids? What's the historical data regarding our professional development budget line item? Are we using these funds effectively? I see professional development line items as typically the first ones that get cut when there's budget issues. How are we spending our professional development money? Do you project any additional personnel to be added before the end of the school year? Right? If this is a retreat over the summertime, you say, hey, do we have any extra money in the account just in case? It seems like every year we have to hire one more person. Have we created a line item for that? What's our current fund balance in comparison to our overall goal? You get asked this every single month. This is a great strategic question. You should have that in mind. If our goal is $100,000 at the end of the year, that means we need to save, if we're on a 10-month schedule, $10,000, right? 10 grand a month will get us our $100,000 goal. If we're only able to save $7,000 in month one, we've got to make some adjustments if we want to get to our $100,000. When we meet our fund balance goal, what are we going to be using that money for, right? So maybe our overall fund balance goal is 3 to 6 months of operational finances. That might be $1 million. So once we get there, now what? What are we going to do? What are we going to take the other $100,000 for? Are we going to invest it somewhere? Are we going to invest it back into the school, into the facility, into our people? What are we going to do? So again, just to finalize this, let's talk about roles during the process. Your board's responsibilities are to form strategic planning committees, define the process and develop a schedule for completing the plan, providing information from the external environment that will help in consider strategic options, asking strategic questions, making strategic decisions, schedule consistent review of the plan and results in your outcomes-based calendar, and make adjustments if necessary. The administrator's responsibility is to participate in the strategic planning process. Okay, that's the retreat and the plan. Devise effective ways to incorporate levels of stakeholders, again, bringing your critical friends in, collecting and analyze program and service data, presenting the results to the board and the stakeholders, recommendations for strategic options, and lead and implement the tenets of the plan in regards to school operations. Okay, the board creates the overall, here's where we're going. That's what they establish, and they verify success. The administrator creates the plan to get there. All right. So again, any questions or comments? That is my teaching for this session. Any questions or comments, go ahead. You can email me at tom@leadersbuildingleaders.com. You can follow us on Twitter at LBLeaders. And you can always go to our website at leaders-building-leaders.com. Thank you for adding value to me today, and I look forward to hearing about your results of your retreat next year.